6 days before the opening match of a home World Cup, the USMNT ended their final tune-up with a 2-1 defeat to Germany. While a 1-goal loss to a powerhouse isn't a disaster on paper, the physical status of the team's only goal scorer, which we'll reveal at the end of this video, suggests the roster is far more fragile than the coaching staff admits. To track the data behind the tournament, hit subscribe. The 2026 World Cup was supposed to be the golden generation's moment to prove they belong among the world's elite. Instead, a sellout crowd of 63,000 at Soldier Field watched the U.S. concede almost immediately and spend the rest of the match chasing the game. Despite the result, head coach Mauricio Pochettino remained upbeat. In his post-match remarks, he focused less on the scoreline and more on the team's mindset, famously stating that culture eats strategy for breakfast. But leaning on winning culture as a primary defense is a gamble. If the U.S. relies on mentality to fix tactical gaps, they risk entering the biggest tournament in their history with flaws that elite opponents have already begun to exploit. The problem started before most fans had even found their seats. Germany scored in the second minute, on their very first attack. As the ball moves forward, the American defensive line is caught flat-footed, allowing Havertz to ghost into space unmarked. Watch the gap between the center backs. On a set piece, there's no tracking, leaving the penalty box wide open. Pochettino later described this early collapse as a learning moment, framing the deficit as a necessary test of the team's character. Testing character is valuable in a friendly, but a defense that sleeps through the opening whistle against elite opposition will find it nearly impossible to recover once the World Cup begins. To defend the performance, the coaching staff pointed to the stat sheet: 16 shots and nearly 55% possession, suggesting the U.S. was the more proactive side. However, the team's only goal wasn't the product of a built-up attack. Antonee admitted that when the ball fell to him, he simply hit it as hard as he could, hoping to hit the target. This scatterplot illustrates the team's expected goals performance over the past year. When the U.S. faces top-tier opponents like Switzerland, Belgium, or Germany, they consistently finish in the negative differential quadrant against the world's best defenses. Relying on individual wonder strikes to bail out a stagnant offense is a high-risk strategy that rarely holds up across a deep tournament run. That team culture showed signs of strain. In stoppage time, frustration boiled over into a physical confrontation between Tim Ream and the German squad. Rather than addressing the lapse in discipline, Pochettino suggested the referees were being overly aggressive, deflecting the focus away from his players' loss of composure. A culture built on resilience should remain disciplined when things go wrong. If the response to being outplayed is to commit fouls and blame officials, the foundation is less stable than the coach claims. There is no more time for tune-ups. In 6 days, the U.S. opens the World Cup in Los Angeles against Paraguay. The team is entering that match with a defense that struggled to track runners, an offense relying on luck, and a mentality that is already starting to fray. But the most immediate threat is the health of the roster. Antonee, the only player to score for the U.S. in the last window, left the field against Germany with hamstring cramps. This follows an 18-month struggle with various injuries just to make this final roster. If his body is already reaching its limit in a friendly, it raises a massive question about his availability for the group stage. The U.S. is heading into their most important tournament with their primary offensive threat struggling to stay on the pitch, and a strategy that hasn't yet proven it can beat the best. The World Cup starts now. Tell us in the comments if you think the U.S. can fix these gaps in time, and subscribe for our coverage throughout the tournament.